Good afternoon, guys. It's time for another video from your prognostic expert, Joseph McMahon. That's me. So there's a lot of talk and speculation going on, a little bit of buzz in the upper stratosphere, if you know what I'm talking about, of the potential of a sudden stratospheric warming event. Now, there are huge implicating factors resulting this, and I'm going to basically go through what I always go through. And, it's really quick and convenient because basically what I'm going to discuss in my videos, I basically have the pictures right over here. Don't mind this irrelevancy with, the Maserati steering wheel. Anyways, we're going to go right up into the stratosphere. So right now we have a strong polar vortex at 10 millibars, as you can clearly see where the greens are. You have a strong vortex signature. So obviously right now we shouldn't expect any displacement in the polar vortex. And if you go down to 70 millibars, it's still relatively strong. So what am I looking forward is this. You see what's going on over here, all right? You see these lines that are kind of wrapping around. They're like tight over here. This is the polar vortex exterior wall. You have a warming anomaly. And if you guys remember, I was tracking an anomaly in Siberia days ago, and now I've noticed that there's been a redundant occurrence in this particular spot of Siberia of warming going on. Now, the GM assembles. Keep in mind, it is 360 hours out, but the overall picture, this makes sense. There's support because of the albedo snow level, the percentage of the solar radiation bouncing off the snow in Siberia and jumping back into the stratosphere, going back up into outer space, and the stratosphere absorbs it. This makes sense, okay? If you're one of those people that are just going to be like, oh, well, it's this far out, I understand that, but I think it's time we learn a little bit different ways of forecasting meteorology, because if you're going to say, even if something is 200 hours out in a model, if there's observational support, use it. Don't say, oh, it's definitely going to happen, but there's a potential, because you're model hugging. I don't care what you say, that is model hugging. All right? You see that the exterior wall is being penetrated by what is called a Rossby wave. This is a planetary wave that protrudes right into the stratosphere. Now, is what am I saying true? Well, let's go and see. Yes. The vortex is displaced. The Rossby wave is now punching straight through the polar vortex and dropping the anomalies right along the perimeter that I outlined. So, this response is going to happen sometime in January. There's no pattern change coming in December. There's a transitional period that will last between 1 to 1.5 months at least. This started at the end of November, and it's still going on right now. As we get closer to the end of our transition, our storm potential will increase. So, going down to all this irrelevancy, I was basically talking about how your katabatic winds works in Antarctica. And this is also very important as well, because what's going on in Antarctica is also helping us drive our ENSO with our Peruvian current. So you have your Palmer low, you have your dropping anomalies over here, lowering your heights, rising here, high pressure flows to low pressure, yada, yada, yada. You understand what I'm talking about. Atacama high pressure over here, continuing the force of bringing that cool water up and intensifying the Peruvian current. So as we scroll down, and we keep on scrolling down, we look at our long-range CFSV2, which has been absolutely incredible with nailing our forecast this year. I don't know what's going on, but this model is doing very good. And we look over, and I'm trying to point out over here that we have dropping heights on the southeast coast, the potential of a positive PNA, and the potential of some blocking up north of Maine. Not the best position, but it's better than it being east of there, which brings on the east wind, and that's rain with your storms. So no one should be expecting blizzards galore, snowstorms galore. Storm potential increases with the potential of more cold shots. Now, if cold and the storms meet at the same time, you definitely have a snowstorm possibility. So I go on into deeper detail. I have not seen one person post this yet. All right, here, right over here, you see that basically our setup going on with our differential of our El Nino, and this is La Nina, which is what we don't have. You can see dropping height anomalies right off the southeast coast while it's rising in the upper Midwest. All right, you got blocking up in the Atlantic. Okay, you have all these different factors. You got your PDO, you have your ridge on the West Coast. You have all this going on into taking that into consideration. Here is something that's so important I want you to look at. If you look at these yellows and these oranges, these are your low pressure storm potential track. So anyone north and west of, say, these big bullseyes, okay, you're on a cold side of the storm. If the storm is tracking like this, all right, and it's going into these circles, okay, northwest of there gets the snow and the cold. And you can see from at least North Carolina to Maine up into Nova Scotia, you have the potential to potentially get rocked this year. And I've been bringing this up over and over and over again. So you have to understand what's going on and taking that all again also into consideration. As of right now, our December 8th potential, the storm does get close enough to us, however, it will not come screaming up the coast. As you can see, our 500 millibar geopotential height is flat, and it will follow these streamlines out to sea because our Pacific jet is swimming right into the west coast. Alright, so we don't have to worry too much of the factors on that. And you can see with the support at 250 millibars, the same exact results. Powerful Pacific jet comes slamming in right over here. So a lot of things just aren't exactly lined up yet. I go also over to the anomalies with the, this all over here is all rising heights. This is kind of setting up like a roadblock and pushing us storm out while our Pacific jet slams in like that. So we don't have a high pressure over Montana to anchor this to bring the high pressure further out over here. Low pressure comes in and hits us. That's not going to happen. Another very great indicator that I think is very useful is a TPW, total precipitable water. Basically, your dry air is pushing your storm east. And that's basically showing, again, influx and increasing moisture in the Pacific Northwest, slamming that Pacific jet stream right into the west coast while you have a high pressure anchored north of Maine. If it was a little bit further north and west or north, this would bring the storm a little bit further up north. This high pressure is in Montana. Potential for the storm also to come north. But when you have a jet slamming like this, it just flattens the entire trough axis. I have seen this from time and time again. If the Pacific jet is slamming into the Pacific Northwest and there's a storm that's being forecasted on the East Coast, most likely it will not happen because it flattens the trough axis out. Alright, so I'm basically just kind of going over a lot of the things. And I was tracking the teleconnections, and there's actually a drop going on in the PNA, and that's the response to the West Coast getting hit with that Pacific jet. You have other contributing factors that are, inhibiting and not allowing your blocking to set up properly. You have an NAO spike, another thing you have to look at as well, and there's no cold air injection whatsoever. So we have that all covered down, and I basically continue to go into detail. Here, okay, I was talking to Zach of Hasbro Prediction Center and Bobby Marsh at Eastern Pay Weather Authority. We have the anomaly going from Siberia and trying to protrude and penetrate right into the North Pole. As this continues, and these reds begin to dominate where all these purples are, and all these purples begin to fill in south of there. Basically what I'm trying to explain to you guys is if all of this lovely red just kind of gets shoved right up into here, you're taking all these lovely little purples that were originally up in those areas, and that would basically kind of focus right along the southeast coast. That's what I'm basically saying in layman's terms. So I post a couple of these, and you can see the intrusion of the Rosy wave, one by one, kind of squeezing in. So this will take a transitional period of a couple weeks. I think the first or second week of January will have our complete pattern flip. That's also potential for our first major, significant to major snowstorm, which is a possibility as well. Again, I was tracking this anomaly 5 days ago. Turns out that this anomaly was actually a Rossby wave and creating an atmospheric ripple up in the northern territories of Siberia and northwestern Canada. And as you can see that there's that protrusion right over there. Wrapping around, Rossby wave punches right through over here. Alright, so I have a lot of support of, what I've been talking about. So that's pretty much, honestly, everything I have covered. I don't really have anything else much to say on that, at least. But I want to just go back over to our SST's weight mean and our analogs. And as you can see, no east-based El Nino is going to set up, and it should end as west-based, okay? It is central-based right now, however, it will end as west-based once we get into March, which I have been saying for a while. I did not say that our winter was going to dominate by west, which is not what's going to happen. So, I basically just go into detail about that. I go into the analog details. Looking out over here with our anomalies, usually where your arrows kind of tightly compact like over here, that's where your storm signals really are, your intense storms. We have another one over here in Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern, England, and one on the East Coast over here. All right, so our pattern is definitely developing nicely, I can definitely say. And you use the flow to kind of determine what's really going to happen. All right, again, February, same thing. There's a strong storm signal on the East Coast with the confluence of divergence and convergence meeting with one another. All right, so just take all what I'm saying into consideration. I break down, January as well. I do believe that, our more intense storms for January will head, more towards like Nova Scotia, northeastern New England, but the storm development will start to get going. But once February and March rolls around, I think it's really going to focus around the New York City, New Jersey metro area, Long Island. I will have an outline focusing that as well, potential hot spots. I just basically continue to just ramble on and explain, what I've been saying for a while now. I do not expect a pattern flip to happen in December. As you can basically see, our Pacific Jet protrusion on the west coast and our southeast ridge is very dominant. All right, so that is why you don't have a pattern flip coming in December. If you get a snowstorm in December, okay, and a warm-up is coming, that's not a pattern flip. It's your end cycle of your transition, okay? So I just basically just continue to say the same things. Just look at what I have been posting. The MSLP analogs, where your lowest pressure and your highest pressure is, that confluential pressure difference, okay, with blocking up north, and you have your protrusions of troughs in the south and east. Arrows, all good. Go January, February, and March. All the people that are forecasting for a warm winter, I will promise you my Twitter account you will bust, all right? I'm putting my Twitter account up for a risk, and I really do mean that, because people are seeing how serious I am with what I'm talking about, all right? So we go back over here. I break down to you guys in simple and plain English of what's going on, all right? January, February, and March are all great setups with that, protrusion with the high and low going on. So do not worry, winter will be coming. It's just going to take several weeks for it to actually settle in. And once January rolls around, our typical P&A setup may look like something like this, with dropping heights south and east and rising heights north and west. That's pretty much all I honestly have to say. Watch this video, get something from it. Feedback is welcome, both positive and negative. Just understand that I have a debating background, so I enjoy confrontation. It's a form of publicity and advertising. I will see you guys later. My voice is starting to kind of hurt.